each other's children, each other's grandchildren, each other's faith, that we would all be strong. I think if you have been a Christian for any length of time, you have to be aware at just how much Satan is attacking people. And he knows he doesn't have a lot of time. He knows that better than we do. And he is just going full force after our families, after our churches. We have to hold each other up in prayer. This is one of my favorite songs. It talks about that very thing. And I hope it will inspire us to pray for each other. There are walls made by men, built by frail and human hands, that an enemy can scale and get to you. But there is one protecting me from my greatest enemy. It's a wall that Satan can't break through. Sometimes a wall of grace, sometimes a wall of faith, other times it's sweet mercy that I need. But the one for which I long, it makes all the others strong. I need a wall of prayer surrounding me. Oh, my sister, when I'm weak, would you stand instead for me and pray a fortress round me so strong it can't be moved? And I promise you today, when I bow my head to pray, I'll do my best to build a wall of prayer for you. Sometimes a wall of grace, sometimes a wall of faith, other times it's sweet mercy that I need. But the one for which I long, it makes all the others strong. I need a wall of prayer surrounding me. Sweet hour of prayer, sweet hour of prayer that calls me from a world of care. The one for which I long, it makes all the others strong. I need a wall of prayer surrounding me. I'm so thankful, and I forgot to grab a mic. Do I take that one? It's right there. Okay. I'm so thankful for all of you being here today. Can you hear me all right now? Do I need to turn something on? It's fine? No, it's not fine. Where's the button? Am I on now? Great. Awesome. I want to thank you all for being here today. This is my third time to be here, and I can't even believe it. It's an honor to be asked to go somewhere one time, and then when you get to go back and see everybody, and I get way too attached way too fast. And so I love being able to go back and see those that I know and remember, and the friends that I've made when I've been someplace. And this is really special. And I'm so humbled and honored to be here. How many of you, this is your first time to be here at this? Okay, I met quite a few. Wow. I met quite a few this morning. This was your first time to be here, and that's really exciting. My name is Amy Vasick. My husband is Pastor Joe Vasick, and almost 29 years ago, we started our church, Northeast Baptist Church in Danbury, Connecticut, and we actually started in Brewster, New York, and then we got a building and 5 acres of property over in Danbury, Connecticut. I brought Lauren Frederick with me, who's grown up in our church, and it's just wonderful to be here today. I'm going to give you a little bit of my testimony in and throughout the day. So how many of you have never heard me talk before? Oh, wow. Well, this is going to be great. I feel like I could just say everything I've ever said always, and it's like it's the first time. So that's awesome. I really am thankful. It's hard for wives and moms and employees and caregivers to give up a day. And I appreciate that. I'm a caregiver for my husband. I haven't always wanted to admit that because to me, that's not what I feel like I'm doing. But my husband's health for the last 13 years has not been great. I'll talk about that a little bit. But I haven't wanted to admit that I'm a caregiver. That's not what I don't feel in that role. He's my husband. I love him. And so it doesn't feel like that to me, but I am one. Are any of you caregivers here? You care for someone, maybe a parent, or maybe, okay. It's a big job, especially when someone's medical issues are in your hands and you have not received medical training. So you have to learn really quickly and just ask the Lord for help every moment. And so I'm thankful that you gave up a whole day to be here today. I don't take that lightly. I have some pictures that I'd like to show just by way of introduction, and I'm glad I wasn't going to do this because I thought this is my third time there, but so many of you are new, so I'm glad we did. This is my Superman right there, and I've always called him my Superman. Here's why: because he's 6'5", and okay, his hair's graying now, but when I first met that man, let me tell you, jet black hair. I mean, I would have followed that man anywhere. And I did. I was born in Dothan, Alabama, and now I live in Danbury, Connecticut. So I did follow him anywhere. But we've been married 30 years this year. And what a milestone. I come from a broken home. How many of you are from broken homes? There's something about, I don't know if it's this way with you, but there's something about reaching the year past when your parents were married, when their marriage ended. My parents were married 22 years, and then my dad just didn't come home one day. So when we reached that when we reached 23 years, I was like, whoo, I could call it quits right now. I made it longer than my parents. He didn't think that was funny. But the reason I call him my Superman, obviously he looked like Superman to me, especially when I met him, but I once saw that man carry a washing machine single-handedly up a flight of steps. I'm telling you, he was so strong. He was just a workhorse. He still is. He's the hardest working man that I know. But 13 years ago, and I'll talk about this a little more in a second, but he stepped on a little sea urchin off the coast of Rhode Island, changed our lives forever. Little creature, did a lot of damage. And for the last 13 years, I've seen him be strong in much more important ways than physical strength. And he's an example to me. So 30 years we've been married, and a friend, actually, our daughter-in-law took that picture for us on our 30th anniversary. You can go to the next one, please. Oh, my goodness. That's my first little grandson. And I just want to leave that up the whole time. Isn't he so cute? And let me tell you, he's so smart. He's a genius. And he's so well behaved. I mean, he's just perfect. And I am one of those grandmothers. You can go to his name is Luke. You know what? He was here last year. So if you were here last year, you probably saw him, but he was so little. And this is my newest one, and his name is Joseph James Vasic V. But they call him, it's like royalty, isn't it? But they call him Josie for short, which is so cute. All right, you can go to the next one. I have a YouTube channel. For some of you, this is going to be new to you. For some of you are like, enough already. I've seen them. Move on. But I think there's 70-something episodes on there now, and I'm working on more and more all the time. But a lot of them are interviews on YouTube. A lot of them are just thoughts I've had, experiences through the years. I started this at the beginning of 2020, actually spring of 2020, because everything was shut down and we couldn't gather. And I had friends saying, can you do something to help us be able to meet together? So I started a YouTube channel called Full Recovery. I don't know if you can see the name of it there in the green, but it's Full Recovery with Amy Vasic, and I think you'll enjoy it. There's a lot of, one of my goals is to introduce women, really great women that I know, to other women and let you get to know who they are and let them inspire you. So that's my YouTube channel. You can go to the next one. My husband has had a radio broadcast in our local area on our local talk radio station for, 14 years, something like that. And just about a year ago, maybe a little over that, somebody said to him, why don't you start a podcast? Because my husband is an amazing historian. I'm telling you, he is so well-read, educated. He teaches it. He takes people on history tours. And so a lot of these podcasts are only 7 minutes each, but he will give you lessons from people in history that are so inspiring, and that's why it's called Stay the Course, so that we keep our faith strong and learn from these people. One day a week it's history, one day it's Bible doctrine. I forget how it all goes, but every day of the week there's a different slant, and I think you'll enjoy that. There's some little cards on the table that will remind you about that if you want to take it home and put it on your fridge. I think that might be the last photo. Is it until, one more. So the first time I was here, I had just previously, like a month before that, sold out on my last book. I've written a book called Dealing with My Family's Divorce, because it's not just the parents that divorce, it is the whole family unit. The whole unit is, and it's really hard, and believe me, I was raised by a single mom the majority of my childhood, so my heart goes out to families who have broken, but primarily my heart goes out to the kids. And so we always say, we got divorced. No, the whole family is divorced. The whole family is broken. And even if you're an adult and your parents get divorced, how many of you has anybody experienced that? You were an adult when your parents got divorced. Is that not difficult? I mean, I was 9 years old. And it affects me to this day. And so I can't imagine being an adult and then all of a sudden that happening to me. So I wrote a book about that, and I sold out like a month before I was here. Would you believe, because of COVID and everything that happened after that, I have been waiting this whole time on my second printing. So I should have it next week, and I'm so disappointed that I didn't have it here. However, you can pre-order it. I have a book over there. Well, if you just write your name and your address, it's $15, and I will make sure as soon as it comes in, I send them out. Okay, but it's just a book to help. Primarily, I wrote it for young people because when I was a teenager, I've always been a reader, and when I went to look for something to help me deal with the effects of my broken home, there was nothing. And there still really isn't anything, especially not from a Christian biblical viewpoint. And so this is something that you can put in the hands of a young person and say, I don't know really what you're going through maybe, but this can help you. And that's why I wrote it. It's not a tell-all. I started out writing a tell-all, and it was like the size of a dictionary. And I said, you know what? Nobody needs to know all that. All anyone needs to know is, how did God help me conquer this? And so that's what's in that book. No salacious details, nothing like that. So I think that'll be a blessing to you. It will be a blessing to me when it finally makes its appearance. All right, and I think that's it, right? Am I right? I'm not sure who I'm looking at, but I think that's the last one for. Okay, you can wait for that. You could put one of my grandsons back up there for a moment if you want. I would be so happy with, there you go. Oh, look at that face. I just want to smush him. I'm going to, Lauren, would you help pass out these handouts? And then could I have somebody over here, a couple of somebodies? Here, I can take this over here to help pass those out. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I want to talk to you today about, we're talking about the King is coming. And I'll tell you, I won't bore you with all these details, but we recently moved into the parsonage. We were living in New York State, and just, I'm not talking to anybody strange here, am I? Let me tell you, we're an hour north of New York City, and it just got really rough. We had a third of an acre, so just enough for our house to be on and a little bit of a side yard, 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, and we were, between school and property taxes, almost $10,000 a year. And it had just, when we first moved into the house, it was $5,500, and that was like 15 years ago. And we just said, you know what, we can't do it anymore. We can't do it. And so we have moved into the parsonage, at least for now. And I tell you what, I'm loving it. I don't have to drive. I live at the church. I always said I lived at the church, and now it's really true. But I will find myself walking from the church to go home, and I will just stop in the middle of the property and just say, Lord, what is holding you up? What is keeping you? If you want to know if you'll find faith on the earth when you come back, you got it right here. I am full of faith. I believe you. And you're going to come, and I know it. I believe it. So come now. What is keeping you? And the crazier and crazier this world gets, don't you just long for the day that he's going to come back? I mean, I'll be honest with you. There's a big part of me that doesn't feel ready. Not that I'm not saved. I'm saved, and I know it. But am I serving him have I given everything? No, I haven't. I want to. And I want to, the older I get, I told my husband, I said, I should be slowing down. I'm 52. I'm going to be 53, which is not old, but far from it. But I said, I should be slowing down a little bit, but I can't. I want to serve him with everything I've got, everything in me. And I haven't done it perfectly, and I haven't done as much of it as I'm going to wish I would have. But so in that respect, I don't know. But I am anticipating his return. I believe he's going to keep his word to us. And I just don't know what's going to happen between now and then. But we have to make sure our faith is strong, and that we are doing what he left us here to do. It would have been wonderful if the moment we got saved, God just said, okay, now come and live with me. But the reason that wouldn't work is because how else is anybody going to hear about him if we're not here to tell them? So he had to leave us here. And it's our job to make sure that people know how great he is. I know it's sometimes you feel like you're maybe pushing it down people's throats, but don't you just feel that if they just knew how wonderful it is to be a child of God, that they would love it, and they would say, wow, now I see what you're talking about. And I pray. We have a lady in our church. This is her prayer request every Wednesday night. I pray for all the lost. I want them saved. And boy, that has convicted me. I can name a few, but there's billions in this world that are lost and without Christ. And so I've started to, Lord, save all the lost. I can't name them all. I don't know them all, but please save them. And I know he wants that more than we do. I want to tell you a story that happened one night over dinner. And it's pretty funny. I mean, it wasn't funny at the time, but how many of you like breakfast for dinner? Do you ever do that? Okay, we've always been that family. We like breakfast for dinner. We'll have omelets, or we'll have pancakes, or whatever. Well, one night, my my son's favorite food group is bacon. So he would eat bacon every meal of his life, and my husband too, they both love it. So one night I was making French toast, which, how hard is that, right? I'd made it a million times. And so I pull the cinnamon out of the cabinet, I'm making the French toast, and everything's good, and I've got the bacon like in perfect flat strips, okay? You can't just mush it up with a fork. Don't get frustrated and just start, oh, for crying out loud. No. Keep it flat. And if you really want to keep it flat, you can bake it. I mean, it doesn't get that super, like in a cast iron skillet, but it'll do, and it keeps it flat. Don't lose your faith in that bacon. Don't just swirl it, okay? Because then you get extra black edges, and then some of it's like not done. It's not good, okay? You have to have flat bacon. So I had done that really great, and we've got it on the table, and I sat down to eat, and I put one bite of that French toast in my mouth, and I thought, that is the nastiest bite of food I've ever had in my life. What happened? And I said, guys, I'm sorry, let's not eat that. And my husband, who is he's just a wonderful man, he keeps eating. He's like, no one, this is really good. I'm like, give me that. And I just threw it all in the trash. I said, give me a minute, I'll try again. And I ended up making something else because I was out of bread. Well, a few weeks later, we were going to have breakfast again for dinner. And so I went to grab the cinnamon out of the cabinet to make my French toast. And I just reached in a hurry, and I grabbed it out, dumped it in, and I thought, wait a minute. That's not cinnamon. And I look up and okay, there's the cinnamon. Oh, my word. I put cayenne pepper in the French toast the last time I made it. Because they look alike. They're similar in color. I was in a hurry. I'm just trying to get dinner made. And I made the most awful meal in the history of meals. But it was an easy mistake. And, it was just the kind of thing that just, oh, wow, I didn't mean to do that. But how yucky that turned out. But I learned my lesson. I had to move it. Because otherwise, I would make that mistake again. And I didn't want to ever do that again. Even though they look so much alike, they are very different items. You have to move it. I had to move it. And I want to talk to you today. You see your title there, Preventing a Septic Home. We're going to talk about how to do that today. Let's have a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for these ladies, Lord, they love you so much. They gave up a whole day just to come and learn how to be what you want us to be. Thank you for loving us, and we love you. Please be with us today. Help me not to say anything I shouldn't. And we love you. In your name we pray. Amen. 13 years ago, when my husband stepped on that little sea urchin in the ocean, he didn't even realize he had done it. He came back. We just went there for one night because we'd had a really rough week. And in fact, he had called me. It was Friday morning, and he called me from the church and said, I want you to pack up an overnight bag for everybody. We're going to go away tonight. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so fun. And I really needed a little break, and he could sense that. And so he had gotten us just a really nice room right on the ocean in Narragansett, Rhode Island, 3-hour drive from home, so not too far. And we enjoyed a nice dinner that night. We walked along the ocean. In the morning, while I was packing up, he and the kids went wading in the ocean just one more time. It was the beginning of June, so the water was still really cold. They were the only idiots out there in their bare feet. And when he came back to the room, I noticed that he was leaving like a little half-moon shape of blood everywhere he walked. And I said, did you cut your foot? And he said, no. And I said, well, something is happening. There's blood everywhere. So he sat down on the bed. I lifted up his foot, and I just saw a little cut. And I said, I think you stepped on glass or something. And he said, oh, I don't know. The water was cold. I didn't even feel it, whatever happened. And I said, okay. Well, we, bandaged him up, went on our way. And it wasn't very long before he was flat on his back, could not move, and just very sick. And he just thought, I've got a little bug or something. And I will never forget, it was the first start of our missions conference that week. And I played the piano for our services, and I remember I looked up at him from the side view, and he's standing behind the pulpit, and he leaned on it and put his leg up almost into the pulpit to like rest it. And I thought, boy, that's weird. I wonder what's going on. He didn't have a fever, nothing like that. He just sort of felt crummy that day. Well, I went down to his office and after church, and he had gone in the nursery and grabbed a bunch of baby blankets, just trying to warm up a little bit. He was tremoring. And I said, hon, I don't think this is a little thing. I don't know what's going on, but I said, can we go to at least a clinic this afternoon and just see, because he didn't want to go to the ER. You know how men are. I don't need that. I'm fine. I'll just sweat it out. Okay. And I said, I don't think you're going to sweat this one out. I said, I don't know. I just feel like we've got to take you or you're going to leave me. And he said, it's not that serious. I said, let's just go. Will you just go for me? Put my mind at ease. Well, we went to a walk-in clinic, and we described the symptoms. And so the doctor on call that day just said, he's got the flu. And I said, really? Because he doesn't have a fever, none of those things. It just seems like weird to me that you would say he has the flu. And he said, well, he's got the flu. I'm going to give him Cipro for the flu, which I don't know if any of you even know what that is. It's like the strongest antibiotic you can take for the flu. But I didn't know that at the time. I was like, okay. And I said, you know what? Not long ago, he stepped on a piece of glass in the ocean. Could you just check his foot? Just, I know there's not going to be anything there, but could you just check his foot? So he looked at it. There was no redness, no swelling, nothing like that. And he said, no, this isn't related to what's going on with him. He's got the flu. I said, okay. We got the prescription filled, took him home. He wasn't in church that night because he was starting to feel worse and worse. A few days later, his foot started to morph into this thing that was starting already to get unrecognizable to me. So we called the doctor back, and he said, oh, that's just the infection from the virus working its way out. And I said, okay, again, that doesn't sound right to me, but he is a doctor. I had no medical training. It didn't sound right. So eventually, I talked my husband into going back, and we saw a different doctor that day. And she took one look at my husband, and she said, do not go through the drive-thru at McDonald's for a Coke. Go straight to the ER. She said, this is something related to your foot. I don't know what, but go to the ER. And we did. And that night, they were taking him to have an MRI just to see exactly. I mean, we were kind of blindsided by this, like, okay, it's obvious there's a problem with his foot, but there was just a little piece of glass. There was no redness, and I got I cleaned it up and everything, so maybe it's not that. We don't know. Well, they took him up to have an MRI, and I'm sitting in the MRI waiting room by myself because we didn't think it was a big deal, even though he was so sick. And I'm sitting there by myself going, Lord, I am clueless here. I don't know what's going on. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a doctor. You gotta help us here. You've got to guide us. And after that MRI, a doctor came to our room and said, we're going to try something in the morning that's kind of experimental, but I can't really even give you details of how it's going to go. We're gonna operate, and we'll just see. And it was so vague. And I said, no, you're not. Because if you can't talk to me straight, this man is my husband. He's all I've got. And you're not giving it to me. You're talking so vague. I need somebody who will explain things to me. I don't know these terms. And so after that, we were in Danbury Hospital, which is a teaching hospital. 9 doctors came in. You know, some were students, interns, but then there were other doctors there, and they're all talking over each other. You know, it's like they don't know what to do about this. And my husband's laying in the bed, and they're all talking, and I'm listening. I'm like, do you guys have degrees? Can you show me? Like, what were your grades? I mean, I have learned, just because you have a medical degree doesn't mean you graduated at the top of the class. And so I'm like, I don't even know, you know, should I be listening to you? I don't know. And so they finally go out in the hallway, and I see one of them, a tiny little female doctor, going like this. Well, it was on this leg, going like this. And so I followed them out, and I said, what are you doing? What is this? And she said, he's going to lose his leg. She said, I'm sorry to tell you, he's going to lose his leg. And I said, whoa, how did we go from we're going to try this little thing, and then now you're taking his leg? And I said to them, who do you answer to if my husband dies? Who's the person that you answer to? And they told me his name, Dr. John Stratitis. He is the chief of infectious diseases at this hospital, and we will have to give a report to him with everything we did or didn't do. And I said, I want him called. I know I'm a nobody. We're just 2 people here. But you guys, something is wrong about what you're saying, and I want to talk to the man that you answer to. I want him to look at everything. Never in a million years did I think that man would come up. But you know what? He did. In about 15 minutes, he came up and talked to me. And right away, he was a very imposing figure and very smart. I could tell that. But he had a very good, a very gentle way. Good bedside manner, right? That's what they call it. And he actually pulled me behind the nurse's station and showed me on the screens all of my husband's MRI pictures. Now, I had not seen that before. Nobody had shown them to me. And so he pulled me back there and he said, I want to show you something. He said, this picture here, can you see that there's white here and then it goes dark? And I said, yeah, I see that. What is that? And he said, that's the major bone of your husband's left foot. He said, the white part is good bone. The dark part is no longer good bone. Something has infected it, and now it's probably going to have to be removed. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And he said, has he had an accident? I said, yeah, he cut his foot in the ocean a couple weeks ago, but we didn't think it was that bad, and we just came home. He said, well, something happened that probably was not a piece of glass. Does he know what he stepped on? I said, no, he doesn't. And he said, well, we are going to have to take him down and operate. He said, but here's why. He said, I probably would have tried to treat this a couple of weeks ago and see what would happen, but he said, your husband's going to die in 90 minutes if we don't do something fast. And I said, not one of these people said anything like that to me. Not one of them. So I said, can you go in and tell him? I don't want to be the one to tell him that. Can you go in to tell him? I said, but do me a favor. Don't tell him. Tell him he's sick and tell him he's got to do this. Don't tell him how long he has. I don't want him to know that. He said, okay. Well, immediately my husband said, oh, do what you got to do. Let's go. Do it. Okay. And so they did take him down, they operated, and after they tested what they had removed, at that point they just took half of his left foot to spare his life. It was not his whole leg. But they did remove half of his left foot. And when they tested it, that's when they told us he stepped on a sea urchin. And it left 26 different types of bacteria on the bones of his left foot. And it infected it so badly, there was no saving it. And it had threatened his life. My husband had come within an hour and a half of dying because he had gone septic, and we didn't even realize it. One little step in the ocean, along with all the other really good steps that are fun and perfectly fine to take in the ocean, in the sand. One little step caused his life to be threatened. You have a handout there in front of you, and I'd like for us to read that verse at the top together. It's Proverbs 12:4. Ready? A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, but she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness in his bones. Bone rot is not a good thing. I've seen it. I've seen the damage it can do. I wish I had time to tell you stories about trying to care for his foot when it was getting so badly damaged. Just a horrific scene. Bone rot is not good. And let me tell you how this verse clicked with me after I saw the pictures and evidence of bone rot. And here's something I didn't know. I did not know that infection in bones can't be treated with antibiotics. I just thought, hey, your body has an infection somewhere. They give you antibiotics. You go home. You're good. But it's not that way once infection is in your bone. It has to go. It has to be removed. There is no treating it. It has to go. A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, but she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness in his bones. A virtuous woman is a crown. A virtuous mother is a crown to her children, but she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness in their bones. A virtuous daughter is a crown to her parents, but she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness in their bones. A virtuous aunt is a crown to her niece and nephew, but she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness in their bones. A virtuous grandmother is a crown to her grandchildren, but she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness in their bones. A virtuous friend is a crown to her friends, but she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness in their bones. A virtuous teacher is a crown to her students, but she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness in their bones. Something has to be removed when bone infection occurs, and we don't even realize it's coming. We don't realize it. Nothing that we consider wrong about America was accepted until our homes went septic. You've all heard the story of Harvey Weinstein, who was a Hollywood producer and abused scores of young women in decent movies, many of them that you and I have watched because, oh, this is a decent movie. I started looking at some of the film credits for some of these young women that he had abused. And it was very wholesome, decent, G-rated movies that I have watched. And I thought about each one of those little girls, young women, that he took advantage of so that they could get a part in that movie. I said, God, forgive me. I contributed to what that girl felt that she had to do, to let that man take advantage of her, to commit that crime against her. Forgive me. That movie's nothing. That girl's life is destroyed now. Forgive me for watching it. That I had a part in that. I don't know if you've heard of Larry Nassar, who is a U.S. female Olympics doctor. He treated all of our Olympians. He treated Simone Biles. And for decades, he has treated these little Olympic gymnasts. And yet in his office, on the table, he abused these girls many times with their mothers or fathers in the room. Now, I can't wrap my brain around that. But over 200 of them testified in court that he did it. My mom was right there. I'm laying on the table, and I'm trying with everything in me to scream and get her attention, but nothing's coming out. And she's on her phone. He abused these girls in front of their parents. He is now in federal prison for the rest of his life. I don't know if you've heard of the fashion house recently that put out an ad. I mean, I'm just going to say it, condoning pedophilia, small children in compromising positions. That company's name is Balenciaga. Maybe you weren't aware of the name or what they were doing. Filthy things. Now, I don't own any piece of their stuff. I don't know anybody personally that does, can afford it. To me, it's ugly. But how did these little children get in these positions where a photographer could do this? Their parents had to be there. Had to be. These children are 3 and 4 years of age. Where are the moms? Is it so crucial that that child be rich and famous that a mother would sacrifice her child to these predators? Where are the moms? Now, there's a deeper level. To me, that's abuse, and the parents should be also charged with abuse. It happened in front of them. I don't know. Maybe that's too harsh. I don't know. But there's a deeper level of abuse even that happens, like a second level of abuse that sometimes it doesn't even involve physical things, but it is making our homes go septic. And I'm talking about our homes, good Christian homes. We have all kinds of homes today that look so great on the outside. And on the inside, something is off. There's a little something that is just making it, ugh. And nobody looking at that meal, that home, would say, well, that doesn't look weird. That looks great. It looks edible. But when those in the home sit down to eat it, they know. This isn't ringing true. This isn't being made with the right ingredients. Something is off. These are some circumstances that I've dealt with in the last little bit. A girl coming home to find her mother bloody, lying on the couch. Her daughter thought she was dead. She wasn't, but she had just cut herself all over with little nicks to traumatize her child on purpose. A girl coming home to find her mom in bed with another man, a brother and sister chained together in a closet. A young man being molested repeatedly by his uncle in his grandparents' home. When he told his parents, they said, "You're mistaken. He just likes to play rough." A girl whose father took the lock off of her bedroom door so her brothers could have their way with her. A girl whose stepmother repeatedly invited a man over to their home even though she knew the man molested her stepdaughter every time. These stories are so offensive and egregious. It is so clear that this is harmful. And we listen to these stories and we feel disgust because we would never be guilty of that. That's what we say to ourselves. Believe it or not, I've seen kids grow up in that type of dysfunction, and many times they go on to live incredible lives for the Lord because they do the math and they can see the difference, and they say, okay, clearly going this way caused this for the home I grew up in, so I'm going to go this way. And they follow the Lord, and things work out great for them. But sometimes the wrong ingredients aren't obvious. And the most difficult circumstances to overcome are those that aren't glaringly bad. The infection is there, but it's not showing symptoms to the outside world. It's that second level of abuse. Jesus said in John chapter 18 and verse 9, that the saying might be fulfilled which he spake, of them which thou gavest me, have I lost none. Now at the end, we know that Judas betrayed him and turned on him. But Jesus was so concerned about keeping those people, those men that God had given him, and he was focused on that. And at the end, he didn't have thousands of people at the foot of the cross, but he did have those that were with him in the toughest of times. And we know that even though not all of those men except John were there at the cross, when they met together in the upper room after it was all over, they went out and changed the world. He didn't lose any of those men. Those 11 stayed right with him, and they replaced Judas. And they went out and turned this world upside down for him. In fact, the book of Acts tells us the entire known world at that time was reached with the gospel. Jesus took that job pretty seriously. And yet we will get so concerned about people outside of our homes. What do they think? What are they thinking about me? What do they need from me? What are they expecting from me? That sometimes those under our own roofs are suffering. And it's almost like it doesn't even matter. It only matters the persona that we portray. It's that second level of abuse. This is what I'm talking about. A mom said to her child, "I love you because I have to, but I don't like you very much." Did she slap her across the face? No. But I tell you, a child will forget a slap long before they would forget a statement like that. If you were anybody else's child, I'd hate you, but you're mine and I have to put up with you. What does that do to a child's psyche? After a third grade girl told her mother that a boy in class called her a loser, the mother took every failure opportunity in that girl's life as she was growing up to remind her daughter that that boy way back in third grade was right and she was just a loser. That same girl walked into her bedroom one day and something said to her, "Get that knife out of your drawer and cut yourself, you'll feel better." She did that. Not an abused girl, no physical abuse, just you're a loser. Several moms threatening to leave their families and blame the children for them going. I can't take you anymore. Another mother said to their daughter, "If you weren't so fat, I wouldn't be ashamed for people to know you're my child." Demanding perfection, and when the child can't deliver, humiliation is the course of action. And slapping across the face. No, that might not be a super abusive thing, but let me tell you, there's nothing more humiliating than being slapped across the face. If somebody walked up to me today and slapped me across the face, I would feel so stunned and humiliated. And yet we don't think there's anything wrong with doing that to our child. It's the most humiliating thing, one of the most that you can do. Here's the big one. And you may say, "No, that's not big." Getting in the car after church and immediately chewing up and spitting out the adults that your children love. I have seen that do so much damage in the lives of children because they don't know what to make of that. You know what goes through the minds of children when they grow up and they start doing the math on their homes? Okay, but wait a minute. You're talking about this person right now, but you sit in this church. You sit here. So we're here every Sunday morning. We're here Sunday nights. We're here Wednesday or Thursday night, whenever our midweek service is. We give ourselves to this church, but this is what you think of these people? Why are you giving your life to something you don't agree with? And then they grow up and say, "You know what, I don't think church is for me anymore." And then we, as parents or adults looking at the situation, we say, "You know, it was just that church. They just didn't really do right by our family." And then our kids saw it, and so many times the kids will go to somebody else later and say, "You don't even know what my parents used to say about you as my pastor, or you as my pastor's wife, or my youth pastor, or my Christian school teachers. You don't even know what they used to say about you." You know, those people, no, they're not perfect. And is there corruption that has to be dealt with? Absolutely. I mean, I think some of you are hearing me for the first time today, but I think those of you that know me know, let's get it out. I'm a firm believer in get it out, talk it out, let's work it out. If criminal things have happened, let's take care of that. I am not for sweeping anything under the carpet. But I will say, I think the vast majority of young people who have not been hurt in some way, and there are plenty that just left, I think many times they loved those people in that church. They loved their youth director. They loved their pastor. But every week they were hearing them torn down in their presence, and they didn't know what to make of it. They said, "You know what? The whole thing is not good." And they dismissed it and rooted it out of their lives. A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, but she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness in his bones. I was telling my husband recently, I think the commandment in the Bible that we disobey the most collectively And I don't even think we think of it as a commandment because it's not one of the 10. But I think the thing we disobey the most as Christians is what Jesus told us to do in Matthew 18 when there's a conflict between people. What does he say? Go to them. Go to them and talk it out. And if they will not give you a hearing, take someone with you and go try again. But what do? We grab our friend who loves that person that we have a rift with, and we say, well, let me tell you what they did. You won't love them anymore after this. We don't maybe say that, but that's what we're after. We're so manipulative. We have got to face that. Just look in the mirror and say, how many times have I orchestrated a breakup in a friendship? Or tried to. Here's a good philosophy that every single one of us needs to adapt, whether you're talking about friends or your pastor or whoever it is. The moment you talk about a person, the moment you say something gossipy or critical or something about a person to another person, you should be ready for that relationship to be over. You should tell yourself, I'm killing this relationship. And if it's not worth it to you for that relationship to be gone, then zip it. Just button it up, because no one's keeping anyone's secrets anymore. No one will keep your confidences anymore. And you may say, but this is my best friend. And I'm telling you, we're living in a day and age, and I believe it's been brought about because of social media. But we are living in a day and age where people do not keep confidences anymore. I've told my children their whole teen years, you're growing up in a different world than I did. When I told my best friend something, she didn't tell. When she told me something, I didn't tell. But now we might not put a name or something, but we're gonna get it out there. We're gonna let the people, oh, I know about that. That desire to be in the know is so great that we can't clam up. We just can't stifle. We've got to say it. And so I've told my kids for their whole teenage years, no one's going to keep your secrets. So be very careful with whom you share any information. And if you talk about a friend, just mark it down. Someone will tell them. They will. They're not going to keep it anymore. And how many relationships have been destroyed because instead of doing what Jesus said to do, we have to go to a million other people and talk it out because we want to appear not so bad. So how do we prevent a septic home? How do we not make that mistake of, oh, it's just a little off. There's just a little, I'm not abusing anyone. I'm not a criminal. Look at us all. We're nice ladies. We're not doing things that are abusive. But we constantly do things that are just a little off. Number one, have a real connection with your God. A real connection with your God. Spiritual women don't destroy things. And if you are connected with God, you will realize the love that God has for that person that you're targeting. He would never do that. They're his child too. He's pulling for them just like he's pulling for you. So have an all-day connection with him, a real connection with your God. Psalm 119:1, blessed are the undefiled in the way who walk in the law of the Lord. That's so amazing. Psalm 143:8, cause me to hear thy loving kindness in the morning. I've had a habit for 13 years now of in the morning just being still and knowing that God is God. And I just sit somewhere. If I can get outside, I do. This morning I had to go by a window and just look out and just watch God resurrect the earth. Because if he can do that, then he can resurrect what's dead in my heart. And I want to meet with him and have that connection starting in the morning and keep it going all day. Number 2, deal with your issues. Deal with your issues. Somebody sent me a little clip a few days ago of something that a lady had posted on Facebook, and she's I don't want to give her away because she's a nice lady, but she's an author, and she's got a Facebook page with a pretty big following. And she wrote this little paragraph that said, You don't need counsel. You don't need help. You don't need to talk to anybody. Just be a good Christian, and all of your problems will take care of themselves. Well, wouldn't that be wonderful? Except here's the thing, the term good Christian isn't even in the Bible. So what does that mean? Is that your standard of what a good Christian is? Obviously, we know we're supposed to be becoming more and more like Jesus Christ every day, but even Jesus said, now be a good Christian. No, we're supposed to be letting him work in us and through us. And do you want to know how many hours Jesus spent alone in prayer? And I'm telling you, he was working a lot of things out. I think there's only everything right with dealing with what you've been handed, how it's affecting you. We all come into this adult years with some significant baggage at this point in our lives. And you got to ask the Lord to help you. Okay, how can I put this down? I need to put it down. But if you don't know that you need to put it down, you're going to keep carrying it. So you have to analyze, okay, I've got some issues here. I need some help. Talk to someone. Talk to someone who's been down the road a little bit longer than you. Someone who knows their Bible. I have had a lot of help through the years to get to where I am today. Not a perfect life, but somebody who knows, okay, there's help in here for me. Whatever my problem is, there is help in here. And I can find it. And if I can't find it on my own, I can talk to somebody else who'll say, well, you know, I was reading this, and this jumped out at me. Thank you, Lord. There it is. When I went to college, I started looking at my life like a big wall, just like that wall with cinder blocks. And I put first, and I made a little chart, and I put in that chart all of my strengths. And there weren't very many. And even many times, the things that I thought were strengths really were not. But I thought they were. Things like, I am super independent. I am self-sufficient. I am a studier. I work hard. Some of those things are very good qualities. But I also had a lot of glaring holes, things that I said, okay, these are weaknesses. I hate male authority. I had a complete lack of respect for any male authority. I had to deal with that. Why? Because God wanted me to get married. I had no plans to marry when I went to college, but God, no, you're going to get married, and you're getting married to that one, so you got to do some fixing up. And believe me, it was worth it, and I did. But I had a complete lack of respect for male authority. I could not fall asleep at night unless my whole head was covered. Because when my dad left our family, I was terrified all night, every night. And I carried that with me for a long time. I had a terrible fear of rejection. And anybody that offered me correction, constructive criticism, a gentle nudge, I immediately said, done with you. I'll push you away first before you can push me away. And those are weaknesses. But you know what? I said, God, I need these filled in, and I've got to have people. I've got to have people show me how to do this. God sent people into my life to help me. And he can do that for you too. Deal with your issues. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. You could all quote that with me. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Lean not unto thine own understanding. Next to that verse in my Bible, I have written, don't settle for your own approval. Because my approval is not good. Number 3, keep your offenses small and say, I'm sorry every time you do offend. Say, I'm sorry. I had to do this with my son and daughter-in-law just about 3 weeks ago. And I said to them, I said, you know what? I ran my mouth yesterday. It was not anything against them or what they're doing, or I don't do that, praise the Lord. But I talked freely about something that I should not have opened my mouth about. And I went to them and I said, I am sorry. Will you forgive me? Was that extremely humbling? Yeah. But it had to be done. I had I had done something wrong. And you know what? They were so gracious and got, Mom, come on. No, I mean it. I'm sorry, and I won't do that again. Keep your offenses small. Romans 14:19, let us follow after the things which make for peace and things wherewith one may edify another. There are very few things in life more edifying than, I'm so sorry, I wronged you. Will you forgive me? You know how it feels when somebody apologizes to you, right? We've got to be quick to do that for other people, and I have got to hurry. Next, number 4, be the same on Monday as you are on Sunday. Proverbs 18:14, the spirit of a man will sustain his infirmity, or a woman will sustain her infirmity, but a wounded spirit who can bear? Many times, we don't get help when we need it because we think we're normal. This is normal. Everybody has these conflicts. Everybody lives like this, right? We think it's normal. We go through a good season and think we have it under control. I've been good for 2 weeks. I guess it's done. Pride, we're wise in our own conceit. We shudder in embarrassment to think of someone else finding out that we really don't have it all together like we say we do. We don't realize that there are people whose homes and lives really aren't crazy like ours are. Satan has convinced us that seeking help is a weakness when really it's a strength. And for those of us in the ministry, we feel like it's because we're the experts, right? We're ministry experts. We don't need help. We do the helping. You know, sometimes I flip through books written by people in years gone by, and again, I won't name any names with this, but I think, my goodness, they had no clue what they were writing about. They probably should have put that aside until a few more years had gone by, and they could see some results from what they were living. We have to do better. We have to do better. I think, how many of you do work in the ministry? You work for your church. You're the pastor's wife, or you're, okay. Or how many of you work with teens, or you teach a Sunday school class? I mean, all of us serve in some way. Don't get so proud that you think, I do the helping, I don't need help. You need more help. Great families require great love. We can't skate anymore. Satan's onslaught has been too powerful for us, and it's been proven. And we've got to get stronger in the Lord. Next, don't expect your family to just get over it. Psalm 147:3, he healeth the broken in heart and bindeth up their wounds. I love reading the story of Job because in the end, God does more listening to Job than all his buddies, his wife, anybody. God listens to him, and then God reminds him of just how big he is. What an amazing God we serve. God never, ever looks at you and says, just get over it. No, God looks at you and says, let me come along beside you. I will hold your hand. I will heal that broken heart. Let me dry your tears. You know what's interesting? When Jesus does come back, when he does return, what's one of the things that we're looking forward to the most about heaven? He shall wipe away all tears. But it doesn't say he's not going to let us have them. I don't know why we're going to be crying in heaven initially. I think it's going to hit us. A lot of things are going to hit us. I should have done more. I know that person. Oh my goodness, they're not going to be here. I think there's going to be a myriad of reasons. I think sometimes about the first 10 minutes, I think we're going to be shocked at who's actually there. Wow, you made it? Wow, God is merciful. Who knew? Wow. But God never just says, come on now, just get over it. Now, he wants us to get over the things that have hurt us, but he understands better than we do. We've got to go through it, and he will help us heal. Quickly on the last two. Number 6, love and encourage your family. Love and encourage them. And I'm using that term in a broad sense. Whoever is around you. You may be empty nesters like we are now, and you think, well, it's just the two of us. Encourage him. You may be a single lady that you have your family outside of your home. Encourage them. If you are there's a lot of grandmothers taking care of their grandchildren now. A lot. If you are responsible for your grandchildren, make sure you encourage those grandchildren. Whoever is around you, encourage them. 3 John 1:4, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. Don't you want for those around you, the next generation coming up behind you, to walk in truth? When we were raising our children, Catherine, Joey, and Amanda that was my focus. And honestly, for my husband and I, and this sounds cold and harsh, and maybe you wouldn't even agree with this, but our philosophy was those 3 have got to make it. Everybody else is a bonus. And that's how we went about our ministry while our children were in our home. Those 3 have to make it. Why? Because Jesus said, of those thou gavest me, have I lost none. And he didn't give me anybody else's children. He just gave me mine. And now my focus is much more broad on those who are coming up behind, because we're still parents, but we're not raising them anymore. They're gone. They're married. But those of you who have the next generation under your influence, make sure that you are encouraging them. Number 7, beg God for mercy. Psalm 18:25, with the merciful thou wilt show thyself merciful, and with the upright thou wilt show thyself upright. You can put that picture up now, the other picture, if you wouldn't mind. A few years ago, a young man in our church posted this picture on Facebook, and boy, it broke my heart. His caption read, I totally feel this. And not too long before he posted this, his father had sat across the desk from my husband and slammed his fist on my husband's desk and said, don't try to tell me how to fix this from the Bible. I'm so sick of that. And it wasn't too long that they walked away from our church and walked away from the Lord. But their son posted this. I totally feel this. The name of the picture is Mama Rains Down. And I think you get the idea of what that's trying to represent. Can you picture it? If you're a teacher, that's your student. If you're a grandmother, that's your grandchild. If you're an aunt, that could be your niece or nephew. If you're a Sunday school teacher, that could be a child that you're trying to help. If you're a bus worker, that's a child having to shield themselves from your hurtful words. We have to do better. We have to get to the place where we say, okay, I've got to move that pepper. Get it out of the way so that I can make sure every ingredient that goes into whatever it is I'm doing, whatever my circumstance is, that I'm not creating rottenness in their bones. I'm putting together something that is worth sitting down at the table and eating. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you again for the chance to be here today. Lord, I know this was a little bit heavy to start off the day with, but I pray that it will sink in. We have got to make some changes so that the next generation are not growing up in these septic circumstances where before we even realize it, it's breaking up, it's busting up, it's revealing itself to be not what it should be. Help us to ring true in this life. Thank you for loving us, and we love you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Okay. I don't really want to end that without a chance to take a minute to pray. If you want to pray, if anybody wants to come to the altar. Susie, could you play quietly, please? If anybody needs to just take a minute. There was a lot in that. And we all probably have something to think about, even if it's minor. So let's just take a couple minutes, okay?